Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Log Show here this week. And do we have a big week for you? I know I missed last week for those of you who love to tune into the live stream. For those of you who love to tune in here on WSJU Radio, I was not here last week. I wasn't feeling well. I had to rest. But I am back and I am better than ever. And my God, do we have a lot to talk about across many leagues in America. We have UFC 294. It happened. And man, did I underplay everyone's expectation, or 295, my fault. But did I underplay everybody's expectations for this event? I was saying after the Jones Stipe fight that this event had fallen off, that there was no more that we could do for this event. It was going to be boring outside of the Alex fight. And my God, could I have not been more wrong about that night being boring. We had so many knockouts, 7 finishes on the card that night, or 7 KOs. I believe it was 9 finishes on the card. Only 3 fights go to decision that night, and it was extremely entertaining for me as a UFC fan. I was able to go to the weigh-ins on Friday, the ceremonial weigh-ins, which was a lot of fun. I recommend for all you UFC fans, if UFC does come to your city, go there because it's never going to be what you expect. I went there expecting it to be a lot of diehard UFC fans, which obviously it was, but not only was it a lot of diehard UFC fans, it was a lot of people who traveled to come watch this fight, and I didn't realize how many people actually did that. I ended up having the luck of sitting next to these good lads from England, these good old lads who were huge Tom Aspinall fans. They brought flags. They were starting chants. I'll never forget it. They were going, Tommy Aspinall, Aspinall, Tommy Aspinall. We want Tommy Aspinall, Aspinall, Tommy Aspinall. And everyone, I had to join in. Cameras came over. People were filming them. They were having a grand old time, and a lot of people were at that. I recommend that for a lot of UFC fans. But nonetheless, the event played out even better with a lot of KOs. I'll talk about that at some point today. And then that leads us into 296, the final card of 2023, which should be an absolute blast by the names that are on it alone. In the NBA, the midseason tournament has started. I've not caught much of it. All I've really caught is watching Draymond put Rudy Gobert in a headlock last night and stuff like that. I didn't really catch much of it. I know the Knicks fell to the Celtics a couple days ago. Yeah. And then obviously the NFL. I have 2 weeks of NFL to cover, so it's not really the traditional standard you're getting where I'm picking a certain game and talking about it and just talking about last week. I am going to be talking about the last 2 weeks overall, really, in the NFL, but obviously with more highlight on this week that we just saw. But nonetheless, I think I will start the show today breaking down UFC 295 because I thought, again, like I said, UFC 295 was a blast. We had so much happen on that card. It was so much fun. We have Alex win by knockout. We have Tommy Aspinall put on an absolute clinic against Sergey Pavlovich, getting an early knockout off a beautiful strike. We got the Andrade fight, which I will talk a lot about because I was rooting for Dern in that fight. And honestly, just so much. Even on the prelims, when you go to the prelims and you look at some of these fights, some of the fights that I got to call out on the prelims were the Roosevelt Roberts fight was definitely interesting. Roosevelt Roberts, after missing weight, loses by submission after a tough loss in his last fight. His career is in question. But then you look through even these early prelims that were on ESPN Plus, and these were a blast, man. Jamal Emmers with a beautiful first-round knockout within the first 50 seconds to get this night kicked off was beautiful. And then next 2 fights went to decision, and then Jared Gordon said, wait a minute. we wanted excitement, right? And he gets that first round knockout right as the first round was about to end. A beautiful, beautiful fight out of both of them. And then on the prelims, we had Tabitha Ritchie versus Lupita Gudinez. That was a great fight. That one ended up going to decision. And Gudinez really got a big win there in decision against Tabitha Ritchie. I agree with the decision going to Lupita, and it was a very good fight, a very good performance out of her, especially standing up. And I said this on the live when I was live at the weigh-ins. If you guys did tune in, you're seeing a lot after the Alexa Grasso championship. And I'm not saying Alexa Grasso was the catalyst because clearly it was right after that these people started showing up. So these people were there already training and love to fight. But you're seeing a large influx, especially in the women's division, of these Mexican fighters, especially after also Brandon Moreno in the flyweight division on the men's side. And you're getting a lot of these women who are real brawlers coming out of Mexico and are really doing really, really well, making real impacts in their division and up the rankings. Lupita Gudinez, she gets a big win against a ranked opponent in Tabitha Ritchie. Hopefully that helps her crack the top 15. If not, I expect Dana to put her up against another top 15 opponent in the strawweight division. Someone probably on the lower side. Maybe, I don't know, maybe after the way she looked, you throw her to a lion like Mackenzie Dern, who we'll talk about later, because she looked absolutely terrible in that fight against Jessica Andrade. So what happens here for her is very interesting. She can definitely make a big jump on the card and in the strawweight division after a nice decision win for her. And now moving on to that main card that we saw that was so exciting. A main card that saw every fight be finished, all of them by knockout as well, not a single submission, not a single decision on that main card for UFC 295. And the Diego Lopez fight, now that one was a good fight. I remember texting my good friend Gavin during that fight, who's a huge Pat Sabatini fan, and he was worried that this could be the end for Sabatini and what's going on in his career after a tough loss. He now is coming off back-to-back losses, a tough loss to a good opponent in Diego Lopez, who caught him with a nice combination, rocked him, smelled the blood, and just attacked and was able to get that finish late in the round. Excuse me. With about a minute and 30 left, or about a minute and 30 into the round, actually, it was, I believe. Yeah, it was about a minute and 30 into the round. So, like I said, Sabatini couldn't really get his holding. He got hit with a nice, I believe it was a hook, if I remember correctly, and got rocked off. A nice combination by Diego Lopez, who I didn't want to throw this out there as much as maybe Sabatini, this could be his last UFC fight after a couple tough losses. Diego Lopez, by all means, is not a bad fighter. Diego Lopez is very, very good at what he does. He's currently on, is it a 3-fight? Yeah. Since coming into the UFC, he's not lost. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Or no, he lost his first fight. Yeah, he lost his first fight, but he's won back-to-back fights now after winning it by submission against Gavin Tucker in August. So, really, Diego Lopez is someone who has shown that he wants to make noise in this featherweight division, a featherweight division that is very, very stacked right now. And, a lot of people want to see Volk lose in his next upcoming fight, just because, no offense to Volk, people like change. And it seems we are in an era of change in the UFC, with Izzy currently, Izzy losing his belt to Sean, Usman losing his belt to Leon, Sugar getting a belt in the new generation. We have Alex dominating the light heavyweight division, seems to be a new king there. So you see it across the UFC. It seems to be what a lot of people like to call an era of change in the UFC. But nonetheless, in this era of change, there are still people who are absolute brawlers. You know what I mean? There are people who are going to be hard to beat who will never go away. When we're talking about the featherweight division, it's people like Volk. When we go to lightweight, it's people like Poirier, Gaethje, McGregor, Chandler, Charles Oliveira will be there. They will be there and they will make noise until the end of their careers, until they put down those gloves in the middle, because they're just that great. So, in much as we like the eras of change, you cannot forget the greats. You can't. You cannot forget the people who made the past era be the past era and built, honestly, for all these people who want the era of change, these are the fighters you grew up with. A Tony Ferguson, who's fighting someone who a lot of these new people like in 296, and Paddy Pimblett. A lot of people are Paddy Pimblett fans. I know one of my good friends, he just got into the UFC. He's rooting for Paddy Pimblett, which a lot of people from my fandom of the UFC would say, how do you root against Kukui? He's the fan favorite. He's El Kukui. It hurt to watch him lose to Chandler like that. It hurt to watch him be on this losing streak that he's on right now after such greatness, after being gypped out of a Khabib fight. And you see this in this new generation. A lot of people are coming up. And now we move on to the lightweight division that I was just talking about. One of these people who are moving up with a big win over Matt Frivola is this dude, Benoit Saint Denis, who I am personally a huge, huge fan of. Benoit Saint Denis. His last fight was on the Cyril Gane, when Cyril Gane won his championship on Fight Night against Spivak. Was the last time we saw him fight against Thiago Moses. But this dude is an exciting fighter. He's able to he's a very versatile fighter. He's able to fight on the ground as well. He has a submission win in his career. And then his last two fights, he's won by knockout. He's a high energy dude. He likes to fight. He enjoys fighting. So to watch him get that win over someone like Matt Frivola, who's been in the UFC for a little while, for a good amount of time. He's really a veteran. Frivola was coming off I believe a 3-fight win streak. Yeah. He's coming off a 3-fight win streak over people. Terrence McKinney, he fought Gennaro Valdez. Good fighters, not big name fighters, but good fighters. Matt Frivola has fought. And now he goes in this fight against Benoit Saint Denis, and Benoit Saint Denis was able to just dominate on his feet the whole time, was landing beautiful combinations. He's currently sitting at 13-1 professionally, and he is someone who I have loved to see the growth of in the UFC. And not only see the growth of in the UFC, but I would love to be able to see him really get going in this division. I would love Dana to give him a big fight in the division. Maybe someone like, I don't know. I'd have to look at the rankings to get someone off the top of my head, because obviously he's not at the point in his career where he can fight like a Gaethje or where he could fight like a Gaethje or you know what I mean, a Poirier. He's not fighting that. So like you look at the top 10 right now. Benoit Saint Denis, after his win, is sitting at 11. He moved up. After that win, he's sitting at 11. So now I say you have him fight someone in the top 10. I think Fiziev is a good fight. Rafael Fiziev could be a good fight for him. Or Gamrot. I think those could be very exciting fights. Honestly, anyone ranked from 6 to 10 would be a good fight for him. All those names that I'm looking at right now in the lightweight division that are ranked 6 to 10, I think would be a very exciting fight. People like Gamrot, people like Rafael Fiziev. I think a Dan Hooker fight would be extremely exciting. And again, even if you want to challenge him about with someone around his range, or 2 other people around his range, if you want to go up one, RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos. obviously a great fight. Or if you want to go down one, I think Bobby Green would also be an extremely exciting fight for him. So I think as the UFC, you have a lot of choices in who his next fight, who Saint Denis' next fight could be. But I think it would be better with the excitement that he's had. You want to make money at the end of the day too, as the UFC, to put him against a top 10 opponent, have him fight someone in that 6 to 10 range, like I said, like maybe Fizev's coming off that. I think it was a DQ loss, if I remember correctly, to Gamrot. So maybe have them fight. See if he could bounce back off that, like a Jan thing where people had that with Piotr Jan, where after his DQ, they were like, hey, let's have him get one more fight before we get him back in that title picture. Make sure he's not messed up. So I think that could be a good fight for him. I think Saint Denis is exciting. I think he could win any of those fights. I think he could win. I think he could beat anyone in that 6 to 10 range, possibly. But I think he could also get beat by any of them. So I think that could be a very interesting look for him and his future going through that. The next fight was one of the most questionable fights of the night. And I don't say that because it was questionable, like, oh, they weren't put out and they ended it, or, oh, there was a questionable shot. No. Jessica Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern on paper arguably looked like maybe the best fight of the night outside of the Alex Yuri fight. This one I thought was going to be exciting. Mackenzie Dern, someone who has dominated fighters on the ground over the past, I don't know, 2 years, I'd say. She lost by decision 2 fights ago, but this is a woman who not only beat Angela Hill, was going punch for punch with Angela Hill. This is a woman who was able to beat Tisha Torres. This is a woman who was able to beat people like she was on such a high uptick after that. Tisha Torres, she beat Tisha Torres last year, and then she loses by decision to I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's Yan, I think it's Zhao Xin. But then she comes into this year in May and puts on such an impressive performance against Angela Hill in that fight, in the main event of that fight night as well. Put on such a well performance, was clipping her with combos, was going with her the whole fight, went 5 rounds and clearly beat her. So people thought, hey, Mackenzie Dern, she can wrestle. Don't get me wrong. She's an absolute beast wrestler. But nonetheless, she is fighting someone like Jessica Andrade, who is Jessica Andrade. She is who I have said to people, she's the Alex. For those of you who don't pay attention to the women's division, yes, she's been here longer than Pereira. Pereira's been in Glory forever doing his thing, being a legend in Glory kickboxing, now coming over the MMA. But he's honestly the best comparison I have to Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade has stones for hands. She has hands, man. And she showed it on Saturday night against Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern looked like someone who did not belong in the same octagon as Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade was able, it took her until I believe the second round to finish her, if I remember correctly. Let me double check it. It was in the second round. So Mackenzie Dern lasted a little bit, but she was over 4 on takedown attempts, and they were sad attempts too. They were sad takedown attempts after she was getting rocked by Andrade consistently. Every single one of Jessica Andrade's strikes were considered significant strikes. 53 total strikes, 53 significant strikes for Andrade, 4 knockdowns, which to me, like, I'm reading this and how Jessica Andrade absolutely destroyed Mackenzie Dern on Saturday night. It feels like UFC video game numbers to me. It feels like someone was playing as Andrade in UFC 5 that just came out on easy mode and just wailed on the CPU. That's what the fight looked like. That's what it felt like the whole time. Shout out to Jessica Andrade, obviously, for putting on an insanely good performance. Excuse me, against Mackenzie Dern, which now that fight, after that fight for Andrade in the strawweight division for the women's, why not fight Tatiana Suarez? I think is a good fight. Carla Esparza, I think, would be a really, really good fight. I don't know if they already have Carla. I didn't see her on any of those announcements for the next couple UFC events. So I don't know if they're planning on having Carla get a title shot anytime soon, but I think Zhang Wei Li needs someone new. I think Zhang Wei Li against Tatiana Suarez would be a good fight. I think, honestly, you just had Lemos fight for the belt against Zhang Wei Li. I think Jessica Andrade against Amanda Lemos would be a very, very good brawl. I know they're ranked 4 and 5, so ranking wise, what does that do? But if you partner something like that on a card where you have like Weili as the co-main, maybe you have Weili versus Yan or Yang. I think it's Yao Shan. But you have Zhang versus Yao Shan, or you have Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. You partner that fight on a card like that with that co-main event. I think whoever wins you could argue if Lemos knocks Andrade out, maybe she earned a rematch, or maybe she fights Carla Esparza, or if Andrade wins, maybe she earns another shot at the belt that she has held multiple times before, and she has proven that she could be that champion before. I think it's a lot of fun what you have in that division for the women's strawweight division right now. I think personally is probably the most exciting, because when I look at the women's flyweight division, Grasso's the champion. I don't know. I think she needs to fight Valentina again. I think Valentina. I'm a big Valentina Shevchenko fan, so I don't know how that will go, but I think personally, maybe you give her Erin Blanchfield just because it's someone different. And then even looking at the flyweight rankings, number 5 in both women's rankings is Andrade. She can go up. That's the crazy thing about her, and that's what makes her so good. As Andrade beats someone like this, right, in the strawweight division, she beats Mackenzie Dern so handily. She destroys Mackenzie Dern. Like I said earlier, it looked like Mackenzie Dern did not belong in the same octagon. If you are really kind of looking for a title fight for Grasso, why not look at the person who just looked like a beast in strawweight and say, let her go up a weight and take a shot at the title? Why not? I think that'd be an exciting fight. Grasso likes to box. Grasso likes to stand up and go. So does Andrade. I think that could be a brawl. So another fighter in Jessica Andrade, where the UFC, I feel like, has a lot of place to go in where they schedule their next fight, who they schedule their next fight to be. And when it comes to Mackenzie Dern, I think you have to give her a challenge. I think it's time for her to be I don't want to call her a stepping stool for someone, because I think someone can beat her, but I think she ends up fighting someone lower on the card. Maybe she fights Maybe she fights Amanda Ribas. Maybe she fights Guteniz, who won earlier in the same card. Maybe that fights the next fight for Mackenzie Dern. I think her next fight is a little more questionable. I don't think she fights anybody ranked above her after what Jessica Andrade just did to her, absolutely embarrassing her. But yeah, it's really interesting. Also, what I find really interesting, looking at these UFC rankings, kind of off topic, why is Rose number 8 pound for pound, but is injured? So she shouldn't be ranked in general. She's not ranked in either division. I don't know. I want to see Rose get back in the octagon, though. I will say that. Same thing with Juliana Pena. Her I'm not as big as a fan of, but I knew Grasso. Like I haven't. She's also hasn't fought in a minute. When was the last time we saw? I think the last time we saw Juliana Pena fight was Amanda Nunes. No, like it's been a minute, or it was a Grasso, I think. But it's been a while. It has been a while. Now moving on to the co-main event of that card, it was Sergey Pavlovich versus Tommy Espinal, Tommy Espinal, Espinal. And Tommy Aspinall was able to do exciting things. I thought he was going to take him down. I thought this was going to be a long fight. I thought this was going to be a Tommy Aspinall wrestling fight. But, oh my God, Tom Aspinall said no. They're feeling each other out. I could paint this picture for you, is how fast this fight happened, how easy it is to paint this picture for you. Sergey Pavlovich and Tommy Aspinall touch gloves. They start feeling each other out, normal UFC stuff, not a lot of strikes. Pavlovich hit one strike, through 7, only hit one. Tom clipped him 1-2 times. I think he only hit him about 6 or 7 times total. And then Tom Aspinall comes in. Boom. Boom. A beautiful, beautiful overhand to hit Sergey right on the temple, hit him right in his equilibrium, as a lot of people say, a lot of fighters say. And that is one of those spots where you get hit. And I talk about this a lot when I talk about how I want to train. And it's like, there's one thing that scares me about training in the UFC. And it goes, it don't matter the size. It don't matter how hard the punch is. You hit someone in the right spot at the right time, you're putting their lights out. And that's what Tom Aspinall was able to do with that strike against Sergey Pavlovich. He put it in the right spot at the right time and hit him right on the temple, wobbled him, threw another one and put him down and put him out for an amazing, amazing performance for Tom Aspinall to become the interim UFC heavyweight champion. Now, what I think is interesting here is Dana came out after and said, as much as what's going on with Tom Aspinall becoming this interim heavyweight champion, we are not going to see Jones or Stipe fight him first. I think Tom Aspinall is going to get a lot of rest. I think he deserves a lot of rest. He even said, he goes, I virtually had no camp. I was unable to really get a full training camp, not even any training camp during this fight. It was very difficult for me with stuff going on. He said he injured his back on about, I think he said it was like the 3rd day of training, he injured his back and barely had a training camp in this fight. So Tom Aspinall is going to get a lot of times rest. He deserves a lot of times rest. I think you have, as Dana said, what was going to happen. I think you have Stipe, John Jones happen for the championship, as is what I think happens here. I think that's a very good fight, is Stipe versus John Jones for the actual UFC belt. And then when the winner of that happens, the winner of that will fight Tom Aspinall. You know what I mean? Whoever earns that belt, whether it be Stipe, which I think Stipe could be interesting. I will say that, because it wouldn't surprise me, in all honesty, if Stipe wins the belt and vacates it immediately. I will throw that out there. Hypothetically, if Stipe beats John Jones, becomes the heavyweight champion, he's the heavyweight GOAT. John Jones, the light heavyweight GOAT, always will be the light heavyweight GOAT. But John Jones, hypothetically, he loses that fight. It wouldn't surprise me if Stipe wins the belt and pulls a GSP and puts his gloves down and goes, that was my last fight, folks. I just wanted to end up fighting the best, being the best. So I think that's what you look at, is however that fight ends up, you either have John. I think it's more likely than not, Tom Aspinall's next fight is John Jones for the unification of the belts. But there's a chance it's Stipe if Stipe doesn't want to stop after he fights John Jones. If Stipe wants to continue, he will, and that will be the fight. So I don't know. The future for Tom Aspinall should be resting, at least for a year, I think, maybe even more, depending on when this Stipe John Jones fight can get done, with John Jones now recovering from surgery after he tore his pec, recovering from that injury. So, extremely interesting to see what happens there. And now on to the main event of the evening. The Alex Potan Pereira versus Yuri the Czech Samurai Prohaska. And man, was that a brawl. That was a great fight. Back and forth. That fight personally gave me every single thing I wanted out of that fight. Like everything I wanted to happen in that fight happened. I'm not going to lie. Every little thing happened. I wanted Alex to win. He won. Alex retains. I wanted it to be a good fight, though. As much as I wanted Alex to win, and I thought Alex would win, and I thought one of them was going to win. Whoever won, I knew it was going to be a finish. There was no way this fight was going 5. No way. There was zero chance that fight was going 5. Alex was very good at watching tape, clearly. Destroyed Yuri with leg kicks. Destroyed him. Something that Jan Blachowicz was able to do the last time Yuri fought. Was able to destroy him with leg kicks. And then, well, actually, I don't want to get into the and then and the end of the fight yet. Destroyed him with leg kicks. But nonetheless, Yuri was 120% holding his own throughout that fight. Was able to take down Alex at some point. Now, Alex honestly impressed me on the ground, but was able to get Alex on the ground and had most of the control time on the ground for Yuri. And not only that, they were hitting combinations back and forth all night. That whole first round, people were getting caught with left hooks, right hooks, straights. Yuri threw a nice uppercut to start the fight. So much happened to start the fight, so much back and forth between these two fighters. These two men were in there not only to just fight each other, but to give the people a show is what they were able to do. Alex landed 49 total strikes, 38 significant strikes. And like I said, those leg kicks were deadly on Yuri, man. They really, really, they were. Alex's leg kicks are some of the best you've ever seen. I remember I saw a clip before the fight. And I know DC obviously hasn't fought in about 4 or 5 years, but DC was interviewing Pereira, and he wanted to really see. He stood there in his fight stance, and obviously he's taken these fights. He's taken these leg shots before from people, from John Jones, from Stipe, from some of the greatest of all time. He has eaten leg shots from. So he goes, "Let me feel this for real." And Alex went 25, 50, and then I think he went 75% at the end. Never went 100%. And the 75 almost put DC on his butt. The 75% had DC. He was like, you watch his knee buckle real quick. And he goes, man. Oh, God, Alec. Whoa. In that DC corny voice that he got. But no, I love you, DC. I love you. If you do end up hearing this ever, I love you. I know I'm making fun of your voice, but I do love you, DC. But nonetheless, nasty leg strikes out of Alex, out of the whole fight, and it really, really made it difficult for Yuri. And then in the second round, same thing's going on, and then Yuri hits a beautiful uppercut, seems to rock Alex. He's backing up Pereira, and Pereira hits a beautiful check. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a check right hook on Yuri, right on the chin that wobbles him, had Yuri fall into him and finished him with some beautiful elbows, made sure they weren't 12-6. They were a nice 2-9 or 2-7 elbow. If you're looking at a clock, they weren't no 12-6 that got John Jones suspended. They were definitely slanted a little bit, as you see me doing the demonstration on the live stream. They were definitely like this. They weren't up and down. Very, very good. Shout out Yuri Prohaska also for a lot of people, the commentary team especially, questioned if Yuri was out during those strikes, if the ref should have stopped it. Shout out Yuri for not being one of those fighters that I hear a lot of, like that you hear a lot of, especially these days when you get these people these platforms and you have a questionable finish like that, where usually you don't know what happened. Did I just go off air? I hope I didn't. But usually you don't know what happened in those fights. Usually you don't know if it's you know what I mean? When you get knocked out, you don't know what happened. So when those fighters get given a chance in the post-fight press conference, usually to say that they were still up, they think they were, because you know, like a lot of the times you see it. I've heard Sugar Sean talk about it with him and in the Aldo fight. That's what it was, the Aldo fight. There's a clip where you could see Sugar puts him out and then wakes him up, and the fight continues. And that happens a lot in the UFC, which is dangerous, but that's a very good possibility that an elbow put Yuri out and then woke him up. So Yuri didn't look out. But shout out Yuri for being a respectful fighter, a good fighter, respectful to Alex. And he goes, no, I was out. He goes, he got me. He got me. I was out, man. He goes, shout out Alex for a great fight. You got me. I was out. So not only shout out Alex and Yuri for a great fight, for putting on a great performance for the fans, obviously one fight of the night, but shout out Yuri Prohaska for hopping up the rankings personally for me in favorite fighters, for being such a respectful loser as well as a respectful winner like he usually is. And you already saw it, bro. Yuri went back into his office. He's back in the woods doing samurai training, doing with an eye patch on, balancing, doing whatever the hell Yuri Prohaska does. He's doing great. He's having a great time doing it, but it's not what he wanted to happen that night. So shout out. So now moving on to week 10 in the NFL. Moving on to the NFL. Week 10 was fun. Week 9 was fun. I mean, there's a lot of topics I really do want to talk about today, especially in the NFL. Like I said earlier in the show, I'm not really going to be talking about the specific games last week as much as I might. I'm not really going to talk about the only specific game I'm really going to talk about is the Saints game because I do it every week and I complain. But nonetheless, I want to open up talking about the NFL with talking about this one person because obviously he's been getting a lot of news. And no, it is not the Pastronaut himself, Josh Dobbs. I will talk about him later. It's C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud currently is putting on I can't say the best rookie season I've ever seen out of a quarterback with what happened to Andrew Luck in 2012, which was absolutely insane. Andrew Luck in what would have happened with Andrew Luck in 2012 was very, very good, as I think the radio fixes itself out of nowhere. So I don't know what's going on in this radio station. But nonetheless, if you guys are listening on radio and I'm back, welcome back. I don't know what happened there. But I'm talking about C.J. Stroud currently and his impressive rookie season. I mean, you look at him statistically right now, he's second best in the NFL in passing yards. He's top 10 in TDs so far this year. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. He's got the Texans sitting at 5-4 right now, which is way better than what they were last year with no quarterback and a very, very similar roster. Yes, they have additions like Tank Dell. They added a lot of people on the defense. So they definitely have more additions than just C.J. Stroud. But the difference we are seeing in this offensive production with C.J. Stroud is absolutely insane because it's not like they have this ridiculous defense. Now, D'Amico Ryans is doing a great job on the sideline coaching. He's doing a great job. Whoever's calling plays down there, whether it's D'Amico Ryans or it's the offensive coordinator, I don't know who exactly is calling plays down there. But whoever is calling the plays down there for Houston is doing a great job in setting CJ Stroud up to be in great positions as well. But it's not like their defense is this all-star number one defense, and then CJ Stroud is playing okay, and that's how he's going to win Rookie of the Year. People are arguing CJ Stroud should win MVP right now. People are genuinely arguing that CJ Stroud should win MVP. And I understand the argument. Now, am I going to sit here and say that he should? No. I am going to get into a segment later, if I have time, that talks about who I think is my MVP, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, who I'm really going to get into. But CJ Stroud is putting on this is the second best rookie year I've ever seen out of a quarterback. He put on 400 yards. He's put up multiple fourth quarter comebacks. Sadly, he lost to one of the worst teams in the league, Carolina. But besides that game, there has not been a game where it looked like it. Not only are the statistics lining up for CJ Stroud, but the field test. He's passing the field test as well. You look at CJ Stroud. He's going through his checks. He's progressing naturally, like he's been in the league for 3-4 years. He seems so comfortable in the pocket on a team that is notoriously bad offensively on that O-line. Laramie Tunsil is having a great year. That O-line is playing pretty solid this year. But CJ Stroud is putting in work, man. He is putting in work. He's finding open receivers. He has players like Tank Dell who's able to get open, but he's finding them open. He's finding Robert Woods in the end zone. He's making these plays. He is a huge part of this offense, a huge part of the team, and a huge part of why they're winning. It is extremely impressive. Now, that's not taking away from D'Amico Ryans and what he's doing coaching-wise. Like I said, that's not taking away from Tank Dell and the amazing season he's putting up at wide receiver. That is not taking away from anybody like that. It's just talking about how good CJ is. And it shows that college and NFL are a different game. All these stupid tests they put you through the combine are all fugazi. You don't know until you know. And I say this every year, especially in April. You'll hear this later in the year you'll hear it when draft time comes around from me. Every year, every time. The draft is a guessing game. As much as we all want to believe that, there are obviously film show stuff. Yes. But we have seen number one picks be terrible, and we've seen the last pick in the league make the NFC Championship. We've seen it all. The NFL draft is a guessing game, folks. It's a guessing game. You're put in situations, and whoever is put in the best situation is going to be successful for them. And everybody's best situation is different. And the best situation for CJ Stroud was clearly Houston. It was not Carolina. For all you saying, oh my God, Carolina's regretting this right now. It was not Indianapolis. For those of you Colts fans wishing that he dropped. We don't know how it would have turned out in those situations. We don't know how he would have turned out under Frank Reich, under Shane Steichen. We don't know. D'Amico Ryans was the man for him to be able to get CJ Stroud to play the way that CJ Stroud is playing this year. That's what you have to understand about the NFL draft. That's what you have to understand about these prospects. Is you want prospects that fit your team, that fit your building, that fit you. For all we know, if they flip successfully. For all we know, Bryce Young in Houston is just as good as CJ Stroud in Houston. There's so much that happens through the offseason for these players to progress into NFL players from college players. That if you are put in the right situation, that can make you progress into an NFL quarterback and doesn't keep you as a college quarterback trying to play in the NFL, you will be successful. You will be good. And CJ Stroud is in that perfect situation right now where he is good. He will be successful. And he is putting on one of the best rookie seasons we have seen since Andrew Luck in 2012. Probably the best rookie season out of quarterback we've seen since Andrew Luck and Cam Newton. Absolutely ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. He's atop of that division. I don't see Tennessee catching him. He's at second in the division. He's not atop of the division. But I could see them, honestly, with the way that Jacksonville's been playing recently. They've been so up and down that I think it's going to come down to the wire between them and Jacksonville for the division. I could see them making the playoffs. Will they go anywhere in the playoffs? That's a whole different question. But I think they're in a good spot in a bad division. I think they have a quarterback who is playing out of his mind this year. So shout out CJ Stroud, shout out the Texans, and shout out to Miko Ryan. Because all of what they've been able to do this year in Houston is very, very impressive. Now, they're not 7-2. They're not 6-3. You know what I mean? They're not 8-1. They're not the Eagles. But this team had the number 2 overall pick last year. They actually had 2 and 3 because they traded. This team had 2 top 3 picks last year. So to say that they have not improved immensely with CJ Stroud at quarterback and DeMeco Ryans on the sideline would be such a false statement. It's insane. It's honestly insane. Honestly is. All right, moving on. Another big news in NFL is, on the flip side, as much as we talk about someone playing good like CJ Stroud, people want the media to do it. People want the media to rip apart Josh Allen. And let me start here with beating up Josh Allen, because I was watching First Take this morning, and they were actually extremely transparent about this. The debate they were having on First Take was, should Josh Allen get the same criticism that Dak gets? Should he? Does he deserve it? And while the answer is yes, while the answer is 110% yes, is it as exciting to rip apart the Buffalo Bills? Or is it more fun to rip apart the Dallas Cowboys, America's team? That's the big thing. When talking about the media, you have to remember it's the media. They want numbers. When you listen to people talk about Josh Allen this year, I've seen it consistently on Twitter when people are not on TV trying to make numbers. Josh Allen has been getting ripped apart on Twitter by Buffalo Bills fans, by Buffalo Bills analysts, by Buffalo Bill writers, by NFL analysts, by TV personalities, people like Nick Wright, people like Stephen A., people like Colin Cowherd, people like Pat McAfee and his crew, and a lot of people have been ripping apart Josh Allen for the way he plays. This year, he leads the league in interceptions. He has 11 interceptions. He leads the league. He has 2 more than anybody else. He's thrown an interception in almost every game this year. The only ones he didn't were, I think, Miami, and I can't remember the other one he didn't throw an interception in. Besides that, he has an interception in every game this year. But I think the reason why Josh Allen's interceptions are more highlighted this year is, one, he's thrown more of them early than he ever has. He threw 3 against New England. He threw 2 against the Jets. He threw 2 against a lot. This past weekend, he threw 2. Or last night, he threw 2. So against Denver. That's who it was. Well, I was blanking. I apologize. I missed the game last night, sadly. Or the other night, not last night. I missed the game. I was announcing the St. John's game. I was unable to watch the game. But, on Monday night, it was rough for Josh Allen again. And shout out the Broncos, back-to-back wins over the Chiefs, over the Bills. They seem to be putting stuff together. So shout out, Sean Payton, and shout out Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson. I love saying it like that. Mr. Unlimited. He's such a movie character, bro. Man is such a movie character. It is insane. But back to Josh Allen. I think what's been highlighted in Josh Allen's struggles is he's now the reason they're losing. Instead of him being able to throw one interception every game or maybe throw two interceptions, but the defense stops them. This Buffalo Bills defense is not as good as we have seen in years past. They've definitely taken a step back this year. Compared to years of past. They're not as good in the secondary. They're definitely not as good against the run. They also have been fumbling a lot. James Cook got benched against Denver for fumbling. You saw it. What's his name just got fired. Why am I blanking on his name? The OC, though, just got fired. So a lot of odd struggles are happening in Buffalo that we haven't seen very often. Same thing with like New England. They're struggling a bunch, something we haven't seen very often out of them. That one's very interesting because rumor has it out of New England that Bill might be done there, which is the craziest sentence I've ever said in my entire life is Bill Belichick may no longer be the coach of the New England Patriots after sitting at 2-8. But same thing with the Bills. The Bills are currently sitting at, if I remember correctly, it's 5-5 after that loss on Monday night. It's not a Bills defense we've seen. It's a Bills offense that's slower than we've seen. It seems to be that if Stephon Diggs doesn't get involved this year, they don't win. And Trayvon Diggs was pointing that out on Twitter this last week. They were saying Stephon needed to get out of there. And maybe we were seeing why that those complications were happening in the offseason. But, yeah, nonetheless, Josh Allen is really struggling this year. But that not just Josh Allen. That's why, and that's, again, why I feel like Josh Allen's been getting a little bit of slack. Is we expect such greatness out of Josh Allen and the Bills where it's just we're such in shock that the whole team is not playing great. They're making mistakes they haven't made before on defense, on offense, just in general. They're making so many mistakes that we don't usually see. So it's interesting, man. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Now, talking about teams, because I was talking about how bad the Bills are doing. I'm going to skip over the Saints today because I don't want to get mad. I don't want to start blowing steam out of my ears after such an embarrassing loss to the Vikings. And shout out Josh Dobbs for what he's been able to do in Arizona and Minnesota all year. The Pastronaut has been the Pastronaut. And before I move on to my next topic, because I brought him up, I will say the certified dog of the week. After last week being extremely impressive, he did not win it last week, even though the show did not happen. He was not written down as the dog of the week last week. It was C.J. Stroud when he put up 450 yards or 475 yards, or whatever it was, some ridiculous junk like that. This week's certified dog of the week is the Pastronaut has landed. I repeat, the Pastronaut has landed. Joshua Dobbs. My God, bro. Watching that Saints game, last week he had 200, didn't even have 300 yards, only had 270 yards and a touchdown. But the plays he made against that Saints defense, I remember I texted my friend. I literally texted him the sentence, Josh Dobbs is God. I was just so baffled by what was happening and what was going on. And the Saints couldn't seem to find where he was in the pocket at all times. And when they did, he seemed to go, whoop, whoop, like he was an astronaut in zero gravity, bouncing all over the place, juking all over, making play after play. As much as it hurts to give someone a dog of the week after playing my favorite team, I can't not after watching what he did. Shout out the Pastronaut and the certified dog of the week, Joshua Dobbs. But back to what I was saying. Honestly, this is probably gonna be the last topic I talk about today. We'll do those mid-season awards next week when I don't have a UFC event to really get in detail about. I'll do my mid-season dog awards, as you guys love to hear. But my last topic I really want to talk about is really this Detroit Lions team that has honestly surprised so much. They've played so well this year. They're sitting at 7-2, which is so impressive for Iron Man Dan Campbell and the knee-biting team of the Detroit Lions. Defensively, they're playing great, but not. They have impressed me so much this year offensively with Jared Goff, with not Ty Montgomery, David Montgomery. Yeah, David Montgomery. Sorry, I was getting him confused with Ty Montgomery, the old Packers running back, who I think is in like New England now as a backup. But David Montgomery, he's been having a ridiculous year. You have what's his name too, who they just drafted, who I'm blanking on. Wow, I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Jahmyr Gibbs. There we go. Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, that two-headed monster has been absolutely ridiculous. Last week, I think they both put up over 100 yards. They have the sun god, Amon-Ra, who's been having a solid year. Jared Goff is having a career year. Their defense is playing well. Their offense, every single thing seems to be clicking for the Detroit Lions this year. They really have become, under Dan Campbell, the brand new Lions instead of the same old Lions that everybody knows. They really have become the brand new Lions. And now you look at this team at 7-2. The question is, are they contenders? That's the real question. And you look at the NFC and you say, are they contenders? And I say, I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I say yes. I say yes. I say, if you really break it down and look at it like this, how I have. Jared Goff has made a Super Bowl before. People forget that. Now, he lost to the Chiefs, but Jared Goff has been there. Jared Goff has made a Super Bowl before. Not only has Jared Goff made a Super Bowl before, but then again, you look at it, everything is clicking for this team. And then also, they're in a conference in the NFC. If someone squeezes out a win against the Eagles and upsets the Eagles, I think they could hold their own against the 49ers of this season. Genuinely. I genuinely do. I genuinely think they do. I think that this Lions team is just as good as this year's 49ers team. Because the way this 49ers team has been playing is I doubt they'll be healthy come playoff time. And this Lions team has been able to do one thing that no other team in the league, knock on wood, hope I don't jinx them, that no other team has been able to do, that not a lot of other teams have been able to do, and that's staying healthy. The only major injury I remember reading from them this year has been David Montgomery, who was out a couple of weeks, but Jahmyr Gibbs was able to hop right in and pick up that slack. They are very much doing a very, very good job. This Detroit Lions team is doing an extremely good job. And I do think they are contenders in the NFC. I think that they could really they have the second best offense overall. They're fourth in pass, fourth in rushing, and sixth in scoring. Their offense is insane this year. And then defensively, if I remember correctly, they're top 10 in everything. This is a very, very good Detroit Lions team. And like I said, you look at the NFC. Who are they playing? I think they could beat Dallas. I think they could smack New Orleans if my favorite team ends up winning the division. They beat Minnesota. They beat Seattle. It's them, San Francisco, and Detroit are the only three teams. And when you only have that many teams, you can't say they aren't contenders. Because in the NFL, especially in the NFL, every dog is his day. And we've seen it. So to say that they can't beat Philly on any given day or can't beat San Francisco on any given day, I think is a false statement. or to say that Dallas can't upset Philly in the playoffs and then Detroit beat Dallas is I think, again, a ridiculous statement. I think with that fan base you have up in Detroit as well, you really have a team that could be like the Bengals of a couple years ago and really make a run this year. I do. I genuinely feel that way about this Detroit Lions team. I'm a huge fan of them. I'm a huge fan of Dan Campbell. And shout out all the Detroit Lions fans. Shout out Dan Campbell. Shout out everyone. They really are playing extremely, extremely well this year. Now, that is sadly all I have for everybody today. Next week, we will obviously be talking about week 11. Not as much news uh, in the UFC because UFC 296 isn't until December. So I'm not really going to preview that for a while. So I definitely will start getting more into a little bit of basketball talk at the end of my shows, a little bit of more college basketball talk, especially St. John's here after a tough loss on Monday to Michigan. I will talk about them a little bit more next week. But besides that, that is all I have for you folks today. Thank you, everybody on WSJU Radio for listening. Thank you, everybody, for listening on the live stream. I actually recorded this one for the first time. I plan on posting it as a podcast. So shout out everybody who listens to this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts is where I would like to post this. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week. I am Logan. This is The Log Show. I will see y'all next week.